All right, hope everybody's doing good. I'm Rob. I am here with a drummer around Kansas City, percussionist, drummer,
Sure, drummer, yeah.
either. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sam Platt. How are you doing,
Hi,
man?
nice to see you, Rob.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, dude.
You bet.
I don't know if we've ever actually have we ever been on stage at a jam because I've seen you at the jam a whole bunch of
Maybe,
times.
but I'm running back and forth. All
Yeah,
the
I don't know.
time,
I've
running
seen you
sound.
play, and definitely you always sound good, man. And
Oh,
it's
thank you. Thanks.
yeah, and I know that you've been playing drums, and doing your thing with that. But I'm always seeing you running sound
Right, right.
at Blue Room.
At the Jazz Museum. Yep.
Yeah. For those people that don't really know you that well, give me a couple minutes on what you've done, like
Oh
played
boy.
and stuff.
Well, I grew up in a musical family. My dad had a country band, and so I played in that. So that was probably my first gig. Only brushes. He wouldn't let me play sticks. And my mom was an opera singer, so she toured, and then she did the church choir, and we had a thing called folk mass, and so I would play brushes in that too. I played a lot of brushes growing up. Anyway, and my sister was a singer also, and so one year we won like most musical family in Missouri because my dad was playing, my mom was on tour with a singing group, and my sister was singing college, and they were touring, and I won all state in percussion and stuff. So
Oh, cool.
so it kind of started there. I started really young. I kept thinking I was getting new drum sets, but they were really my cousins, and my mom would just clean the drum heads so they looked brand new. So I thought I had these new drum sets. But anyway, always banging on stuff. Had really great teachers in high school, in junior high, high school. I tell you, that is, people call me Mr. Lucky, but man, I've been lucky to have the best teachers all along the way that kind of always gave you good advice on not just playing the drums, but playing in a group and how to act and what showing up on time, wearing the right clothes, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
sure.
So that really helped. So I got to that first summer after high school. I got to go to Europe with the. If you made all state, you kind of put your name in, and you got split up into bands with kids from around the country, and you got to go to Europe for 3 weeks. So I got to tour all through Europe and
Yeah.
play.
Wow.
So that was the first time I got to go over there, and well, not 3 weeks. It was a month because I was playing timpani, and we did 26 gigs in 30 days. That's a lot for
It's
an
a lot of
orchestra.
playing. Yeah.
So then I got a scholarship to UMKC, went there for 3 years doing percussion and jazz. There's a lot of infighting between the jazz department and the classical, but I was in the middle because I was in both. And so I wanted to go to Berkeley, so I went to Berkeley School of Music in Boston and graduated there, played around Boston a lot, and met amazing friends, and they're all sidemen that from albums and stuff, and Layla Hathaway and Abe Laboriel Jr. that plays with Paul McCartney, and tons of jazz guys, and Jesse Williams, my friend, that's a bass player with Al Cooper, and he subs with Derek Truck's band, and it's insane. So anyway, went to Berkeley, came back to Kansas City, and did my master's in music here, and I had one recording class, but graduated, went to, my wife got a job in LA, so went to LA, and I did my recording internship there. Basically, the idea was, what can I do to make a living in music? I had different jobs along the way, but my mom was teaching voice lessons. So in high school, like everyone's like, what was your first job? Mine was teaching drum lessons because she had a student that her son wanted to take drums, and mom was like, why don't you want money? Why don't you do that for money, for gas money? I'm like, all right. So I didn't have to leave the house, and I got to, teach the kid. And I still know those kids today.
Yeah.
Or, and so anyway, I I've just always, whatever I do, whatever job I've had, record stores, music stores, running sound, have always been associated with music. So went to LA for a year. I had recorded at Red House Recording in Lawrence, Kansas, and I told the guys, "Hey, man, the studio sounds amazing. You know, if you ever want to sell it, let me know." And I was kind of joking. And a year later, we're in LA, and I get this call, "Hey, Sam, do you still really want to buy this deal?" I'm like, "Yeah." So we converted our home loan into a business loan and bought Red House Recording in Lawrence. So I owned that for 8 years, my money pit in Eudora. But like most of the guys that we've been talking about have recorded out there. So I sold that to the Get Up Kids in 2003, and through this whole thing, I've always played. I didn't get to practice as much as I wanted to before. I always ran sound. When you own a recording studio, it's the same thing. You're like, what do I got to do to pay the rent? And when someone calls and said, "Yeah, can you write a jingle for my bank?" You're like, "Yeah, it pays $1,000. Okay, whatever you want, man. I'll figure out how to do that." Right. So I started writing music for commercials, and it was really commercial music. It was for videos. Like after I sold Red House, I got a job at Premiere Studios, and I wrote music for John Deere for 10 years. We wrote so much stuff that they don't really record anymore. They keep using the same stuff over and over that we recorded. But there were a lot of companies like that when I was a Premiere. There was Cessna and Cobalt boats, and Cessna loved to do things in surround sound. So that was a new challenge. We had the first like full-on 5.1 surround recording studio in Kansas or in the Midwest. And so we were doing all that and recording bands out there. Recorded Ken Lovern's first out there, OJT, and I play with Ken now at Green Lady. And so it's just this big circle of Kansas City, connections. But so that, I guess that kind of brings us up to started playing in rock bands. And my friend Gerald Dunn is the manager at the Blue Room and was like, "Hey man, my sound man didn't show up. Can you?" I just started subbing, being the sound. I was like, I don't want to be a sound man, but okay. So I did it, and I subbed a lot. And then just a couple of years ago, he's like, "Would you do this full time? Be in charge of the audio?" And I was like, "Sure." So it's me, and I have 2 or 3 other guys that sub for me when I'm not there, and because I'm a drummer first, and I want to go play jazz or music or whatever, So if I get called for a gig, I call a sub for running sound because I love playing the drums. Yeah,
sure, yeah.
So
man, you said a whole bunch of stuff there that was interesting. So first of all, how was that? I thought it was interesting. You're talking about dad playing country and then mom opera.
Yeah,
I thought that was interesting. I mean, obviously there's an obvious music connection there, but do you think that gave you any sort of insight, like a weird perspective that other people might not have?
I think so. Not overtly, and my family was never. They didn't teach you stuff. I was the youngest kid in this family of. You wake up Saturday and no one's there. They all have stuff. Dad had gigs and mom's training a horse and my sister's
busy
gone. Yeah. So everyone basically, you pick what you want to do. And, so yes, I think subconsciously, definitely. And oh my, man, my mom took us to New York. I think the first time I was in 4th grade. We went with her opera teacher from Pittsburgh State, and a couple other ladies and me and this little kid in my suit going to New York to go see opera. But then they were like, "Oh, let's do some stuff for Sam." So they took me to see The Wiz, on Broadway, if you know what, the Wizard of Oz, and Pirates of Penzance with Linda Ronstadt and Gary whatever's from WKRP in Cincinnati. So being a 4th grader and seeing that, man, that just blows your mind.
Right.
And then we went back a couple of years later and we saw Duke Ellington, and that right, that's just a mix of what you're talking about, where you have, they did Sophisticated Ladies was this musical with Gregory Hines, who's tap dancing and singing, and Kathleen Battle. So you've got like opera singers singing jazz, you know, and you've got a guy in the pit playing brushes the whole time, which I'm growing up in my dad's band, and he's like, you know, play the beat, play brushes, don't, you know, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of learning, but at least I could do something with the brushes. So yeah, I think I got those two worlds of that you have to be musical and things ebb and flow with the classical and dynamics, and the country was like, you got to be solid and lay down the beat, you know. So
yeah, man, I've just, every single person who's come on the show who's been gigging, every single one of them said they had music in the home.
Yeah,
every single one of them.
Yeah,
and it's been amazing to me. And so it sounds like, I mean, my parents made me, I guess, you know, but I ended up liking it anyway. So they made me, but it didn't really feel like that.
Yeah,
you know. But a lot of people have your same kind of story where they were musicians and it was just sort of kind of osmosis. You know, like you said, it was just around and you just kind of picked up stuff that you didn't even realize.
Right.
And I think a lot of times people talk about they'll go to some college regular like music appreciation college class for non-musicians, and they go, who's heard of Frank Zappa? And the one kid, you know, like, how do you know him? My dad played it, you know. You know, it's all that kind of stuff where you're hearing opera, you're hearing all this extra stuff, and I'm sure that, you know, I'm sure that influenced you. You didn't even know it.
Yeah.
The other thing you said that was interesting is I am fascinated by everything to do with academia in regards to music at colleges. You were talking about the infighting. I mean, would you be able to expound on that, like with the jazz department and the classical department? Because
yeah, I mean,
if you don't want to, you don't have to. Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing. I guess I've heard stories that now it's kind of the same thing that was going on then, where I don't know why they do this, but they have donors. Or maybe donors will say, I want to give my money to the classical department or to the jazz department.
Okay, yeah.
And this was, you know, 86 to 89 was when I was at UMKC the first time. And I think they picked up real quick that I had an aunt in town that was really influential. And we would get the combo together and go, let's go play for, you know, for Aunt Helen. And she would donate, you know, some money. So then all the jazz, not just her, but we would go out and play these shows for people for free, but it would encourage them to donate money. And that the UMKC was started as a conservatory that was just classical, you know. Yeah. So I wish people would just get over that and just call it music. And I think throughout the world there have been a lot of strides in just breaking down those walls, but somehow, you know, Kansas City, it's a very nice town, but it's a little behind on that kind of, you know, that it's okay. And really, the truth is, you're going to study classical and jazz and rock and anyway, if you want to be a better player, if you want to solo, you've got to study some classical scales that you're going to then use in jazz or in blues or, you know, so you're going to need that stuff anyway.
That's what a lot of the really good players would say.
Yeah.
I've had some people on the show that would disagree with that, and I disagree with them. I agree with what you're saying, you know, that you kind of got to dive into that eventually, right?
I think, number one, once we get into the sound thing, I'll tell you, somehow, I don't know, it's just the way I grew up, but I've always been a listener. Everything, I think being a musician, being a sound man, recording a band, all that stuff, comes down to listening first. So then you can make a decision about what you're involved in, what's going on in the moment, you know, staying. Right. But, you know, okay, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, but you know what I mean? That's the first thing is listening. Oh, the other thing, I mean, with listening and how it pertains to playing is I have this theory that every time you listen to something and you let your mind relax and just listen to what's going, you know, that is in your mind forever. And if you want to play it on violin or guitar or drums or whatever, it's just a matter of you accessing it and figuring out
Right.
how to get to that. I think that every time you pick up your instrument, I don't care what anybody says, every time you pick it up, you're going to get better. You know, and all those different kinds of music are going to influence you, you know. So, you know, I'll work on something and put it on Facebook, and they're like, why are you playing that? I'm like, well, I play jazz gigs where you never know what the next song is going to be, how fast, how slow. Hey, Sam, take a solo, and then you got a solo on a song that you barely know. And so you're going to draw from some classical snare drum solos or some jazz song or blues song or whatever, you know. So
yeah, I always find it funny we've talked about this on the show a little bit about different genres, and I didn't even consider the whole money angle with what you're talking about with the school, but just in a different point about classical people looking down on all the little people, right? Playing country, and you know, and then sometimes I would even argue that country people do the same thing. You know, I'm stereotyping, but there's some people out there that just, oh, you play jazz, you know, like that kind of stuff.
You see that at all the jams around town,
right?
Oh, you know,
and jazz guys sometimes can get that way too. I mean, every genre's got their people.
And it's so funny that you'll see someone go, oh, that guy's playing jazz, and I'm like, that dude is killing it. And what's funny is you see that person go up and play, and they're not, and you're like, you know what? You need to listen to more blues.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the dudes that, I mean, because I go to a lot of the blues jams in town, like a crap load of them, and when I go up and listen to like Chris Clark and some of these just knuckleheads go down to the Foundation, I'm like, oh my God, you know, it's like these guys are destroying these songs, you know, and then I go over to the jams and they're like, they don't play real blues. I'm like, please.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's that kind of stuff that drives me nuts, is when they don't even understand. Like, they've never even gone down to the Foundation. They're like, they don't play real blues. I'm like, really? Really? You know, I'm like, so I don't know. That kind of stuff just kind of
oh boy,
cracks
you
me
go
up.
in that room and you can just tell it's a vibe, right? I mean, it's just, the history's all right there.
And Blue Room's the same way. I mean, any of the
Yeah.
jazz clubs are the same. I mean, those guys, you get Matt Hopper and some of these people playing these bluesy stuff. I'm like, oh my God. You know, they just like kick the crap out of it, you know? And
Yeah.
I don't know. That always drives me nuts. And that's, I'm sure you and I are very similar in that way. It sounds like it, that we're, you know, because you were talking about listening. Now, you, if it sounds good, it sounds good.
It does.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, and I think there is some stuff that gets too simple, you know, and it's just kind of like just catering crap. Like maybe once in a while rap tune will be like that, where this is a 2-chord tune, and there's not really anything interesting about it, and it's not that all rap is, but you know what I'm saying? Like, even though that sounds good,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? There's
what
too
record
simple.
label producer got involved in this or whoever? Okay, that's a nice song. Now we're, you know, dumb it down and make it really, you know,
Right.
so we can make more money.
Yeah, and another thing you said that was interesting is we haven't talked about. So you did some commercial jingles, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that, because I don't really know anything about
I
that.
still do it.
Yeah.
And it's morphed. I mean, okay, so I bought the studio in '96, so that was really the end of that whole like jingle thing, and people were like tired of it. There was a guy that in Dallas that would book a motel room and set up all these clients, and they would come in and he's like, okay, what's the name of your car dealership and what's your special? And he would make the same song over and over and over, and you'd hear him on. And so most of the I hardly ever got a jingle. I take that back. I wrote a jingle for Cuties Oranges 3 years ago.
That's fun.
Yeah. And my friend John Lenati, who's a blues bass player that plays with Billy Bats, he sang it and played guitar. And so like in that instance, Cuties sent me these words, and I'm trying to write this song, and I get on this call, and you realize it's a conference call, and you don't know that there's like 13 people on the call.
That's
you know,
funny.
and I'm asking them, they're like, okay. I'm like, well, what are you looking for? And they're like, I'm like, please don't say I want something peppy. and they're like, we want something peppy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. Like, is it peppy rock or country or bluegrass or reggae? And I think people call me, when they want something silly and simple, they call me. It seems like the ones that I've gotten, the ones that were accepted. But anyway, so Cuties had this whole script, and you're sitting there looking at these words, and the first verse is, say, 40 syllables, and the second verse is 10, and it's like, how am I going to make a song? But we did it with a reggae, and I talked John into doing it, and he just nailed it.
Yeah,
So,
I bet just the products that you get would just crack me up. Like Cuties oranges. I mean,
Cuties
just,
oranges.
Some what'd you say? A random car dealership or whatever.
Oh yeah,
I bet that would crack me
Well,
up.
my big ones were Cuties oranges, Frontier Broadband, which I don't know if you've heard of. My mom has it in Florida. It's I forgot what it's part of, but it's Dish Network.
Yeah,
owns
right.
it. It's for when you need internet, like in Montana, and you don't have any, that you're using a satellite to get, But yeah, so I keep calling my mom, I'm Cuties, and she's like, oh, that's nice. And then she's like, I'm at the grocery store and they're playing your song. I'm like, so
You're like, yeah, that's right.
So
That's right.
So Mario Lazoya sang the Frontier Broadband, or he whistled the whole thing.
Oh, that's funny.
And I called him. I go, man, I'm at my mom's in Florida, and they're playing the Frontier Broad. He's like, you're kidding me? I thought it would only be in like Montana.
You're right. That's funny.
So, yeah.
Well, because we'll listen to that and on the radio or something, right? And you'll hear something survived down in I-35.
Right.
They'll just do these silly like I would think writing for that would be like a totally different like mindset.
Oh, that
than
and just
writing
the
like
one
a
you
pop
just
tune.
sang.
Yeah.
If you think about it, that's the same melody line as a pizza place in Lawrence, Kansas, and it's silly, but I guess what it comes back to is like it's the same thing with playing in a band where you have to figure out what your role is and what they want, what people want, and how, that's how you get the gig. And you don't like, oh, let's call Sam Platt. It's all these ad agencies, they, the company will go, we want a jingle, and, you bid on it. And they'll say, okay, Sam, we want you to just do a 30-second, just a quick and dirty. And then they go, they go through and they pick one. So the ones that we, then we do a finished version, or, but how I am so used to doing commercials that I do stuff really fast, and I do it in Pro Tools, so I can always go back there and change. So most of what I've done is pretty much 90% there anyway. And we edit stuff. So Frontier, we got that because we were the only one that really edited the whole commercial into the song. So we'll sing the song, and then there's 20 seconds of just the background music, and you're like, what's that?
Where
Well,
they're
that's
just
the script.
talking. Yeah,
Right, that's the talking moose in his RV. I'm serious, So
The talking moose in his RV.
Yeah,
That's funny.
right.
That's funny.
So
Yeah,
I'm like, Mario, you're a talking moose in this scenario. And he's like, oh, great, thanks.
Well, that's funny because that's something that I've thought about a lot with like radio. Is everything's about the time.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And like when you're writing a song, it's not at all about the time. You're about verse, chorus,
Right.
But there, like you just said, you have your 20 seconds, and then you have your one line or whatever the thing is of the actual singing part.
Yeah.
And then you've got to fit these words in, but it's all about the time. I mean, I'd have to get my brain into that mode.
Oh yeah. It's all about getting that script. And like when Dick Fatherly was alive, he was a genius that he would get these scripts, and he's like, I don't know what these writers are thinking, because there is no way that this can be read in 60 seconds.
Right, yeah.
So he would just sit there and with the red pencil and slash and redo it, so that, and then even then he would get done. and the producer would come in and we'd pick the best takes, and then I would still have to go in Pro Tools and do time expansion and compression to make it nail 30
Right.
seconds, right?
Yeah.
Or 25 seconds with a 5-second bump at the end. That's,
Right.
you know, so.
Well, the Micro Machine guy. You
Yeah.
remember that guy?
Oh, right. Oh,
You know,
yeah.
you just,
And that's all. That's all. They get him to say it as consistently and kind of fast as he can, and then I put it in Pro Tools and speed it up. That's why
Yeah.
a lot of times it sounds really warbly. That's because we put it in Pro Tools and
Mm-hmm.
it just sounds stupid. That program that we use to compress it sounds
Right.
stupid. But anyway, so I would rather go in and take some words out and edit it so it won't sound so warbly, you know.
Right.
But
Well, that's like, I mean, people writing a book, and probably lyrics would work just like that too, where a lot of times people they just keep talking.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like kind of a topic sentence kind of a thing.
Uh-huh.
What's the 4 sentences that you know, the paragraph
Right.
that sums this up? You've got 5.
Yeah.
Right? You need 1.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably what you're doing is obviously you're editing and cutting, but they're trying to put all this information, where like, you know, address, what the hell are we selling?
Yes.
Right?
Right,
Your
sure.
jingle at the end, and
Yeah.
then, right, and that's it.
And what the
you know,
push is,
and
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
one little tiny funny thing or something. I mean, but
Right.
really,
And
I mean,
that's
is that
what
what you're
we-
looking for, kind of?
Well, I mean, everything's different. A lot of these national ones, they are a little hipper, you know. So
Right.
they'll try to do things more subtly, and maybe there's a bumper at the end, or they'll show the address and not say it, or the web address, whatever, you know.
Right.
So there's different ways to deal with it. But I was starting to put it back to music.
Yeah, it is.
Well, you were talking about taking, you know, that happens a lot in songs also where you have like 5 ideas and the producer is trying to get you to boil it down to 1.
Yeah.
I remember we went out on the road with Mike Matheny and we were in the van and he just, I don't know, Chris Cheek was asking him a question about improvising. He's like, man, I take the Eric Clapton school of improvising, and I'm looking for that one note that's going to work through the entire song first, and then he works off of that, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. That's like he's taking a whole song, you know, jazz tune with all these changes and all this stuff, and he's looking just for that one note that's going to be hip, that works through the whole tune. Hey, he's not going to just play that, but
Right.
that's like the center. That gives him a spot to start from, you know?
Oh yeah,
So,
like the theme. You know,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and they'll do that. I mean, that's the hook,
Yeah.
right? In a country tune,
Yeah.
right? They have this,
Exactly.
you know, da 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 da.
Yep.
You know, and then they put it 5 times throughout the song, and then you're humming that stupid thing.
Yep.
10 hours
exactly.
later, and
Yeah.
that before you go to sleep. Yeah, well, that's weird, man. Yeah, that would get me in a totally different headspace from my regular writing of like 13-minute instrumentals,
There
and
you
you're
go.
going
Yeah.
down to 20-second commercial.
yeah.
That would like
Yeah.
blow my mind. So with your whole sound stuff that you're doing, I'm always curious, what is your like priority when you're dealing with sound? Is there like one specific thing? Obviously you want it mixed, right? I mean that's obvious, you know, but is there one specific thing that you're kind of making sure that you have every time that you
Well,
or-
you have, it's 2 parts. You have, it's very similar to being in the studio, but you're trying to make the musicians feel comfortable first, and then you want it to sound good in the house. So first you'll do a sound check and be like, you know, everybody gets something in their monitor, you know, see what you need. Okay, you got it how you want it. Okay. So then, like, Blue Room is a very small room, and it can't be that loud because we do have limitations because it's part of the museum of volume level, right? So same thing happens in a church a lot. So then when you've got loud monitors, or say we have your guitar amp over there, but I got a mic it also, you have to deal with that mix in the house, and you have to EQ. You have to use your ears, and you have to listen, and you have to go through, because when you have a really loud monitor that someone's actually hearing out in the house, it messes mainly with the mid-range EQ, so you have to do a lot of weirdo, EQs in the house mix. So that, because really what, like at the Blue Room we have an acoustic piano, and we really want it just to sound like an acoustic piano, you know. We don't want it to sound real tinny like a player piano or too much reverb. We just want it to sound natural, but we have to make it loud enough. So now you're talking about, you got 3 microphones on the piano trying to
really?
make that
Is there
happen.
3? Yeah, wow.
I put 3.
Yeah.
And so you've got some phasing issues you have to deal with. You got the bass player, his amp is feeding into those mics. The piano player wants to hear that monitor. So now you've got the mics that are picking up the piano and the sound of the monitor coming out. So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then so you have to do all that technical mumbo jumbo, but still make it sound great to the audience throughout the room. So you'll see me walking around a lot because I'm trying to like make sure it sounds good everywhere, you know. So
yeah, that's cool.
So I want it to sound good for the audience, not hurt anyone's ears, but it's, it sounds enjoyable. It sounds mixed, but also make it comfortable for the musicians on stage.
Yeah, I've always, when we were talking about different genres of Indigo, and like, I always find that it's funny when you get really good players on stage. It's like they make your guys' life so easy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're not up to 8 on
Isn't
their
that
amp,
funny?
and they're just
Isn't that funny?
They're usually like, I know I've been accused of this many times at blues jams. They're like, dude, turn up.
Yeah.
Everybody at the blues jam always tells me that. They're like, turn up, and I'm like, okay, and because I'm maybe hyper concerned with that, hypersensitive, maybe even too sensitive, to make sure that I'm not pissing all the other musicians off, and also the audience, mine being a pretty bright instrument in general too is part of that, but like, so with the sound, they already know. Like, especially jazz guys in general are very sensitive. They're musically sensitive, so they're gonna already be playing with an insane amount of dynamics.
That's
and
right.
So, so the thing that I found really funny is that when people are like at big festivals and stuff, or even in big rooms, not Knucklehead specifically, but rooms like the size of Knuckleheads, people always just like blast the bass. Yeah. And obviously at the Blue Room you never hear that. Right. And again, my opinion is, DeAndre Manning's up there, he's not gonna blast his bass. Right. Or any of the great bass players in town. Right. Is there a reason why everybody does that? Is it just like trying to get the girls all excited, or like?
I have no idea. And I don't know if it's, you can hear it, I can hear it. Plus you've got subs on the stage. And if you think about, half of sound is vibration. So, you've got a sub that's sitting on the floor and it's vibrating the floor, it's vibrating the stage. So it's there. I don't know why. I don't know if there is part of your hearing that you start to... you definitely lose high end. I don't know if you can lose some low end, but I guess it's possible if you got that too much bass all the time. But I think that's just something that happens.
Or is that, or seriously, is that just, amateur soundmen?
That's I'm not going to say amateur, but because they are getting paid, but so that makes them unprofessional. But I would say it's definitely something that to work on. And but it is like with a touring. My friend Scott Ralston has run sound for 311 for years and years, back to after their first album, so their second album, Grassroots. He helped record that, and he's been on the road with them ever since then. And every room is different, man. And he's got he used to do it all by himself. He ran the monitors and the mains, and he had this bicycle he got in France, and he'd ride back and forth on this 1950s looking bicycle, fixing the monitors. And now he's got like 3 kids working with him with iPads, and they'll go all around the room and come back and show him stuff, and he's like, oh, okay, So, because when you're doing a big show like that, you got a lot going on at the board, and it's hard for you to do what I do, where you walk around and you can listen and go, oh, I need to fix this or change that, Yeah, so it's difficult, but I think there is another weird thing between musicians and sound men, and it's both parties are guilty, man, where like maybe sound men think that you really don't have to study music, or they just want, oh, I listen so I know how to run sound. And then you have musicians that I've be like, oh man, that guy stunk, and it's like, okay, wait a minute, there was some stuff going on. Both of you, you want your monitor louder than everybody else. You want you louder than everybody else in the monitor. Mm-hmm. So the other guys in the band are like, all I hear is trombone or something in their monitor, which isn't going to be comfortable for them.
Right.
And then the sound man's like, man, the trombone's louder and everything. So So anyway, yeah, it's all of this. What we're talking about is a balancing act. Mm-hmm. It's a balancing act to pay the rent and not have to go get a regular job, so that you're not spending all your time working, and you can spend more time practicing and working on your craft. It's a balancing act between being behind the board and especially the Blue Room. It happens a lot where I'll be writing sound and they'll be like, come up and play. And I'll go up and play and go, man, this sounds completely different on stage. Like, I can't hear this at all. How are these guys even playing? Like, like, is the piano loud enough? Oh, yeah, it's fine. They're like, dude, for years we've never been able to hear the piano, so it's okay. But I still like, oh man, I want you to be able to hear, hear what's going on.
Let's fix something that's been happening for years. It's probably Mm-hmm. Well, two things you mentioned. One, there is totally a thing with sound men and musicians, isn't there? I mean, it's this just funny thing that this sound guy, whatever, and then I know this has happened to me a couple times where we'll be mad at the sound guy, and he's like, dude, your preamp was buzzing the whole show. You know what I mean? Like the cable, and that's on the musician. Your equipment sucks. The sound.
Yeah, but he needs to tell you that at sound checks. So right. Try to switch it out or something.
Right, but my point, I guess, is that we're bitching at the sound guy, and he's like, dude, you're trash, and he's not wrong.
That's one thing I wanted to bring up, and maybe I touched on, but recording bands and being a sound man, the other, you want it to sound good, but part of your job is you're there every week, so you want to make the musicians feel comfortable on stage, because if you're not playing 5 nights a week, and even guys that play 5 nights a week are going to get nervous coming down there. But if you're playing a gig once a month, you're going to be nervous going in this situation. So you're already kind of tense. You're excited about playing, and you're nervous, and then you do you're dealing with the sound man, and you can't hear this, and you don't want to piss him off, but so
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you want to try to make them.
You want to make them feel comfortable, right, so that they can get the best performance.
Yeah, and the other thing that I've noticed is, I think you were mentioning about kind of the different rooms and stuff, and how you go outside. And that's a whole different deal, with sound escaping everywhere immediately, exactly. And
so everything's mic'd there,
right? Yeah. Now, so somewhere so Blue Room in general has generally low ceiling. It's not really high ceilings like a church and stuff, and
right.
And then you deal with everywhere everywhere, and say where it's dampening and.
Oh, you mean Blue Room?
Well, just a place. I'm just mentioning it, just an example of a place. And then you go over a place like Llewellyn's, where you're standing on this hollow box.
Yes.
And then you've got church ceiling basically up. When you have a sort of a boomy room like that where it's high ceilings, what would be the sound objective there? Would it be less lows or
Right.
like is that
Or finding out what that frequency is. But yeah, I mean, exactly. That's what I was getting to with the 311 thing is that every room's different and you have to kind of you're listening to the instrument, but the instrument going through a mic, through speakers in this room.
Yeah.
So half of what you're hearing is the sound bouncing off the walls and the different, like you said, the hollow stage. Yes, we would love to go into Llewellyn's and fill it full of foam and sand or whatever to
Right,
deaden the
yeah.
stage. But if that's not going to happen, then what do you do to do? Yes, you have to go through and find out what is that frequency that's jumping out too much and try to pull it back. And that's what I still like a Blue Room. I try to make it acoustic as possible. Like whoever wants a mic, I'll give them a mic. But if a saxophone is really loud out in the house, you'll come back and look at my board. It's barely on. Like I gave him a mic and it's in the monitor, but I'm going through and I'm like mixing. I want it to sound. I want you to be able to hear. The drums have no mics. Maybe if it's a funk band, I'll put a bass, a mic on the kick. But really, all the other mics are picking up the drums. So it's just a different. It's playing at the Blue Room is like playing in your living room. You can't play really loud, and But like you said, playing in outside at Knuckleheads is a totally different deal, man.
Right, yeah. And that's the other thing I was going to ask too about just volume in general. Kind of like the bass question that I asked is that it seems like everybody always wants to, especially at the rock type venues. Again, this isn't going to happen at the Green Lady or Blue Room. I mean, they've got it pulled down. And my buddy that I play with, Scott Lane, he is intense about that. He's like, we are not going to be a loud band.
Yes.
And he's like obsessed with that, and I think for good reason.
Well, and Jan Faircloth is great about that. He's always been, and I think you have to. It's a very difficult thing to learn. Every time I play outside at Knuckleheads, I'm playing too loud, and it takes me a few songs to figure out. But if you can almost go into a philosophy of wherever I'm playing, I'm gonna play my thing. If I'm a hard hitter, I'm gonna hit hard. If I'm gonna, I mean, maybe yes, at a smaller venue, you need to figure out how to play quieter. But for guys like Jan and I, and that don't really hit that hard anyway, it's like
there comes your brushes. You're joking about earlier.
Stay within your comfort zone, because, like, if I go sub at Knuckleheads. And I'm trying to play, I'm not a hard rock player. So I'm going to play loud for a set, and then I'm like worn out, But if I just stay within, I saw Mike, I always forget his last name, but I'll think of it. But the original drummer from the Fabulous Thunderbirds, oh my God, Mike Buck. This guy, he looks like Mel Lewis up there playing jazz. But the kick and snare are solid as a rock. And his right hand is just dancing on the ride cymbal like a jazz guy. And he doesn't use his hi-hat for timekeeping. His hi-hat is his crash cymbal. He just it's there every once in a while. He looks like the most comfortable guy playing the drums you've ever seen. And it sounds amazing. And it grooves so hard. And he's just so relaxed. You have to figure out, I don't care if I'm playing in a stadium or Charlie Watts, if you ever watch him playing. He's just so relaxed. He's not hitting hard. He's like, you know what? They're going to mic all this up. I'm going to do my thing, do what I do, and let the mics and the sound
do
system
the job. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
And that kills me too, because miking drums, it just never makes any sense to me. Right, Sandstone, yeah, right. I mean, Verizon, you go to Sprint Center, okay, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, maybe you guys can set me straight on this, but inside Knuckleheads, right? Like the inside one. I don't know.
I understand. It's like you don't know if the guy's going to switch the brushes, but I would say. In there it's big enough for him. Mic and all, but the other thing is a lot of those places, Blue Room and Knuckleheads too, have this thing where it's all going through a system, and it might be feeding a stream or a speaker outside or a speaker that's in a different part of the club.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
you at a sound man, what I would rather you do, you mic everything, you get the level set correctly, nothing's distorting, everybody's got a monitor, and then yeah, you don't have to have the cymbals like killing in a room like that. Start low, man. Bring your faders down, and then get to where you can hear the vocals first. Number one. Then start bringing up piano, guitar, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's very easy for everybody to go, I want more of this or whatever. But
Yeah.
you have to kind of just, it's like Jan playing light blues drums in a very large room. You have to stick to your guns and be like, nope, this is what I'm doing. This is why I got the gig, and I'm gonna stay true to myself.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and Jan came on the show. He came and did an interview on the show, and I have always liked his approach, and he's another one of those drummers that gets the touch thing. You know, I mean, he understands. I don't need to, 2 clubs for feet and pound the shit out of this crash. And
You're right.
And he does a fabulous job. I think most of the jazz drummers in town are pretty good at that too. In general, they know what they're doing in regards to just pounding.
Yeah, I've been working on it. Green Lady with Ken. I've been working on, like, the weekends. Okay, so like the first half of the gig is really quiet. So I'm playing my cymbals that are like nice and quiet and stuff. And then the last half of the gig is just everyone's so loud. The people talking and stuff are louder than us. And it's like, I don't want to bash. So I'm working on like, how can I play intensely but not loud?
Right.
So everyone's like, man, it looks like you're just killing that cymbal, but it's not hurting my ears. I'm like, yep. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah, it doesn't always work, but but yeah.
Well, the key is that you're at a point or you've probably been here at a while where you can adjust.
Yeah.
And we've noticed that a lot with the kind of jammer guys, and I'm sorry to say, but some of the guys at the blues jams, they got just one gear. And they can't come bring it up or down. Well.
And like I said, that started from the beginning of my dad going, "Oh, dude, like you're getting loud and the time's going all over the place. You got to calm down and bring it down." And,
That's got to be some of your classical coming out too.
a little bit.
Because we are kings of that in classical. I mean, you have this kind of dynamics in classical.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's really loud, but we bring it really quiet.
Yeah.
And obviously in opera, they would be doing that all day. When rock sometimes, and if you play a lot of rock, you can not have to deal with that as much.
Well, and if you're rock radio, you're working on consistency and stuff like that. So
Right.
It's a balancing act. I guess that's my go-to thing for the night.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you were talking about finding work and figuring it out, and if you got this guy wants you to do jingles and you just kind of deal with it and it's fine, and then sound and drums and whatever. And do you I've talked I've gotten a lot of different perspectives on this question on the show so far. Is at school, the guy would tell you, one of the bass instructors was telling us that if you really want to go for this, you need to figure out a way to sort of be in your parents' basement for a year and literally practice for a year.
Yeah.
You don't get a job, you just go for it, and then after a year of serious work, then you're head and shoulders above everybody else, and then you go for it.
Yeah.
I've heard other people say though that are more entrepreneurial oriented, where they say, no, go get a day job, and it kind of figure it out until then.
Right.
And they kind of go a total other route with it. What's your opinion of that? Or do you have an opinion?
Well, what I did and I don't know if maybe we're just hard-headed or what, but basically, like I was saying before, my philosophy is just whatever is connected to music. If I can do something to make money and it's connected to music, then I'm going to do that, because I saw my dad do that, where working. He and his brothers owned a company, and he would hide this little Casio keyboard under his desk, right? Because he never had time to practice. He had to do the books and stuff. And so my idea is that, if I'm working at a record store, then I can listen to records and get paid. If I'm running sound, I'm hearing it from people going, man, I think like you running sound is really helping your playing because you're listening so much. And it's like, I have to listen, and I'm getting paid to listen. So there are all these things that go into making you a better musician, but there's just nothing beats shedding and playing a gig. Playing gigs. Pat Metheny told us at a clinic at Berkeley, like, his idea is that one gig is worth like 6 or 8 hours of practicing. Because you can go home and shed on something, and you have to do that. You have to do that. Don't let people. I have a few friends that I really love, but they're like, yeah, man, we don't need to practice. Just it's all about figuring it out on the road or on the gig. And I'm like, you got to shed that, buddy. So it is just two parts of it. It's where you've got to put in that time, no matter how you do it. And you can do it. I'll just go ahead and give you my little trick. I practice in the car. I live out in the country, and I drive here to your house, and I always have a stick in the seat so I can drive, and I can maybe tap a little bit, or I'm listening to the radio going, okay, what can I get out of this tune? Or I'll flip. It's so great in Kansas City that we have so many stations that we can hear the blues, we can hear jazz, and you can sit there and figure out throughout the day, I can listen to this station in the morning, this station late at night, and get to hear, jazz stuff that I need to work on. But, if you have that luxury where you can be like, I'm going to take a year and just shed, heck yeah, go for it. But, at some point you're going to get to this where you've got to pay the rent and do all those things, and you've got to figure out how to get your practice time in and do all those other things. So that's what I do is I sneak it in there a lot, and I figure out different things to work on. And I definitely don't practice as much as I should. I wish I did more, and I wish I had the patience to sit down for longer periods of time. But basically, I get an idea in my head of what I want to work on that day, and I'll maybe check it out on YouTube, and I'll take it out to the drums and play along with it in my practice room or in the studio, and then go out the rest of my day. But really, I'm getting in almost an hour every day. There's days where I'm playing doubles, and like Friday I played 6 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. So I probably didn't even get an hour in that day. Sure. But my shoulders kind of bother me, so I got to figure out how to do this another balancing act of like being able to play the gig and not physically it break down on me while I'm,
Right.
But I mean, you've got to practice. You got to play gigs so you can interact and see what it's like to play with other people, and you got to listen.
Sure, yeah. That's I heard Dave Chappelle say this one time, and his dad was asking him if he really wants to do this comedy thing or whatever, and how will you know when it's good enough, or what, his dad was kind of asking that question. He was like, well, I think he said, if I can make enough money gigging, then that's better than being a teacher.
Yeah.
And he was just talking about like a school regular English or something. Right. And he was like, that's a really mature attitude. He was like, his dad was like, because because I mean, he's ready to go into stand-up comedy, like that's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
It was so absurd, but his dad's like, hey, if you have that kind of attitude, then I think you should do it,
Well,
and that's kind of your philosophy. It sounds like
Michael Warren was in medical school at KU.
He's a great drummer.
He got so many gigs that he's like, I'm just gonna do this until like I have to go back to medical school or whatever. Ken Levern is a lawyer.
Yeah.
He's a lawyer, man. He and I were in music school together, and somehow he finished another degree, pre-law, and was like, I'm going to law school. And then he comes back and has lessons with Everett Devan, and he's like playing with Ida Macbeth, and he's like, I can fix his ticket for you, but I don't have time to really practice law, so it happens a lot.
Yeah, sure. And another thing you said too that I've argued, and this happens a lot with like the country style guys, the non-trained musicians, where we have this argument about gig time and practice time. You know, you were talking about that, how they're like, well, you can't learn, basically you can't learn anything in the practice room. You learn it all at the gig, and they're not 100% wrong, because there's stuff that you can't learn in the practice room. I mean, the nervousness and that, but it's like, to me, it's like doing a speech. I mean, you've got to eventually go practice the speech before you get up there. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, and
when Fred Wickham's like, we're going to go play this gig with Donnie Thompson from the Ozark Mountain Daredevils, I'm practicing. I am going to practice. I am not going to show up on stage and suck in front of that guy. So if I'm going to play with Donnie, I want to play with him. I don't want to be like, I'm just freaking out about what I'm doing, because when you're spending all your time on the bandstand, like trying to figure out whether you're speeding up or slowing down, you're not listening.
Yeah.
And you're, you have the opportunity to play once in a lifetime or whatever with this guy who's, played with everyone, and you want to be able to hear him and hear what he's doing,
I think that's a difference too of in the jazz classical kind of area, where we're somewhat, well, this is for sure in classical, we're really precision oriented, and then now you go over to again, I'm stereotyping, sorry guys, but maybe the blues, country, rock kind of area, where it's all about feel, and your attitude, and then so maybe that's where there's a disjunct between me and them, where you could maybe argue that they're not as worried about the precision. It's more about the feel of the band, and maybe even the listening part is that so they're not as worried. That's what I'm worried about.
Right.
I want it to sound really good. I don't want to miss any notes. I want to hit on the cues. I want to, that's what I care about. But that's just not on their top 2 priority levels. They have a different set of priority levels, which is why I think that comes back to the gigging, why they're so obsessed with making sure you learn stuff at the gig rather than the practice. I mean, is that right? Or,
you're right, but I'll tell, this is inductive reasoning, but this is my story about playing classical. Is I was playing at school, I did all that stuff. I'm playing 20th century music. None of it's making sense to me. The conductor is giving me scores to look at, and until for the 20th time, he said, you need to go to the library and listen to this. And I finally went to the library and sat down with a couple of different recordings of these pieces with the score. It made sense.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to sit there and count 150 bars between triangle beats, because now I know the piece of music and I know where the triangle part comes in and why it's there and what's happening, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, So I think that's a case where listening makes all the difference of where, because even in the orchestra, you have to play as a group. You may play every single note exactly right, but if you're not listening to the person next to you and you're not phrasing the same way they are, it's not going to sound right.
Sure. So. Did you do a lot of timpani too?
Oh yeah. That was my main thing. It was
timpani seems fun to me. It seems like just a totally different,
Well, at UMKC they would imitate the director because timpani is like, if you hit a wrong note, it's so big, or it's if it's not in tune, everybody knows it,
Right.
So you can't hide anywhere. But it is fun. But I definitely timpani, I have applied that the most to the drum set.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, the snare drum a lot. That's I guess snare drum more, but timpani to me, you had to do the complicated stuff of snare drum, but you had to really be more musical about how you hit the drum to get the tone.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it's very
not,
melodic too, because you have
Right.
like four timpani and changing
Sure.
notes.
Yeah, I mean, you got to really, because again, I don't play percussion, but I would imagine, I mean, there's a spot that sounds bad.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, and you got to
Absolutely.
find a. I'm sure there's sort of an area there.
Oh, there
of
is.
of give a little bit.
Absolutely.
But like at the edges or something. I mean, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but I'm sure there's a spot.
Well,
there
yeah,
that
you can't
sounds
hit
really,
the middle of the timpani. That's the dead.
Oh,
part.
really?
That's
Yeah.
the dead part.
Oh,
Yeah, you gotta
that's
hit
weird.
it. You go in a certain, however many inches from the edge, and you're looking for that sweet spot.
I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly, and it changes for the size. But how I learned how to tune timpani was from tuning my dad's guitar so much. Sitting there with the piano or a finally getting an actual tuner, but just a little pitch pipe,
Right.
and tuning the guitar, that helped with the pedal going, okay, I got to find D flat or F sharp or whatever,
Right.
I got to find that note. And if you know the song, then oh, my note is with the trombones and they're playing the same note.
Right.
So it's in tune.
Yeah, sure.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I mean,
I'm really glad I don't do it anymore. I can get away with a lot more mistakes on drum set.
yeah. Well, what always cracks me up is when we'd play musicals and they would have just this area of crap. Like this triangle, and then they've got the timpanis,
Yeah.
and then there's maybe for this little thing they have to jump over to their trap, and then you go back and you've got this stupid wood block. And
They're
the
insane,
auxiliary
man.
shit.
Yeah,
that's
we
over
played
there
one
is-
at Avila last year, and it was insane, man. I had my drum set, but I just had all these little stands of. It just
Stuff.
looked like a miniature version of Neil Peart's set, where there's
Right,
just
yeah.
junk everywhere, wood blocks, and
You got
I
the
thought.
bongos, and then you have the chimes
That's
over
right,
here. Like
yeah.
that's just funny.
Yeah, and I think the director there was some weird thing that I didn't have that they had, and they brought it to me. We're all just I think it was the whip noise.
Yeah,
or
that's
whatever.
funny,
He happened
yeah.
to have that, and so we'd make this trap table. So everything, like I had a trap table under my ride cymbal, but I didn't want to get rid of my tom. I still wanted to have that. And I thought, wow, I've got all this complicated. And then I look over at Brett Jackson next to me, and he has every single saxophone that you can imagine,
Plus a flute.
plus a
like,
flute,
yeah.
plus a clarinet, and bass clarinet. He told me, I was like, yeah, you had every saxophone. He goes, yeah, and bass clarinet. Remember
Right.
that? I'm like, yep, bass clarinet too.
Well, it's funny to me like that, and then they'll get like 10 bars to run over here because they're like I watched an orchestra one time. I mean, they only had 3 of them, right? So somebody was on timpani, somebody was on, and they had like for 10 measures they had to run over, and then they do this stupid like, and then they have to run back over to the
And
thing.
you'll have like multiple copies of music,
Right.
so you can put them on that stand. But I try to do that, make a little circle. I mean, it's harder when you have multiple players, but like you said, try to figure out your route, how you're gonna get
Right.
there, And I got to when I was in LA. Gary Foster said, "Hey man, you want to come down and I record every week for Murder She Wrote." And I'm like, heck yeah. So we go to this O. Henry studio that was, imagine a gigantic grocery store that they converted into. It was the hugest, most gorgeous studio you've ever seen. It
Wow.
was massive.
Wow.
And Harvey Mason's playing drums, and another guy, a British guy, and I'm there, and they're loading in everything. And Harvey, that played for Aretha Franklin and all those guys, he didn't play drum set once. He played timpani, and those two guys were just running back and forth, covering parts and just nailing them first and second take. I think the first 2 pieces they did 2 takes. That's it. Like the first 5 minutes of the show. After that, they were just nailing first takes on everything.
Wow,
It
yeah,
was
that's
crazy.
funny.
And Jules was the other percussionist. He was like, "Sammy, do you want to play triangle on this piece?" And I'm like, "No way." He's like, "Why not?" And I'm like, "I don't want you guys to do a whole episode of Murder She Wrote, and I'm the guy that messed up the one triangle part. No way. I'm sitting in the control room watching. I'm loving watching this go down."
Right, yeah, that's
But
funny.
it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's funny. A Murder, She Wrote. That's out of
Yeah.
nowhere, you know.
And that was,
funny.
I'd never seen an electronic guitar before. They had a piano, electric piano, a guitar player, electronic guitar player, bass,
Wow.
miniature string section, like 5 strings or 6 strings, 2 sax players, trombones, like this mini big band, like miniature
That's
orchestra.
fun, yeah.
It was amazing.
That's fun.
It was sick.
That's
and it
cool.
was the hardest music it's harder than any classical we played at school.
Yeah.
It's insane. Because it's just changing time signatures and tempos.
Sure.
And they don't even do it that way anymore. Now they just do it in Pro Tools and whatever, cut and paste stuff. But,
Wow.
yeah, they were doing it live. So, like, you're realizing when the guy's, like, hitting this timpani or something is when the guy's stabbing or whatever. So it has to be exactly in time, So you got like a conductor and another producer inside in the booth that they all have metronomes going on that they've already programmed in for all these tempo changes, and they're watching the video, so they're seeing, okay, I got to change this. Let's change it from 101 to 102 to make sure it lines up with this.
The stab, yeah.
It's got to be right on,
Right.
And it seems so cheesy because it's just like, oh, it's just Murder, She Wrote, but it's like all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes to make that happen.
Oh yeah, I think they're doing that this year with the movie thing, right? At Kaufman, and we got to do one like that. It was a silent movie in college. It was fun. It was only 30 minutes long or something, but it was pretty fun. We had to, kind of had to time it out, and we had a lot of. We had a lot of rests, but we also had a lot of kind of held notes, and then you're waiting, and then you have the, and then waiting for the guy to fall, and you have the, and so he's, the conductor's, watching the stupid monitor,
and that's, Doug Talley did that last year. We played it in the park, it was Hitchcock's first or second movie. It's all black and white, and it was a silent movie. And people do this around the country, but they write their own music to fit those films. And Doug Talley was playing, so he's like, how are we going to do this, for this? And I'm like, just put a click in there so that we have the click in our headphones. And that, it's a lot of work, but it ended up, we were nailing it and it was, he would put like an extra cowbell so that we know when to switch to the next piece and things like that. But it was all to a click that's changing tempo and time signatures, and that's the way to do it. So
yeah, that's crazy, man. So probably getting pretty close here. Do you have any other kind of story that's been fun in the music business, or
okay. So I did want to tell you, this is sort of bragging, but you said, a fun story about being in the music business. Okay, so UMKC, the old director that was director of the jazz program, Mike Parkinson, had this thing with a group of people in Chicago called the Polish American Youth Jazz Foundation, where they would pay for teachers from around the country to go over and do this jazz school at the Chopin School of Music in Warsaw, Poland. Well, one year we did it in Krakow. But so we would go over there we would teach this camp for 2 weeks, and then we'd go on the road for 2 weeks. And so we're over there and we're playing gigs. And this one producer was like, hey, do you guys want to play in Budapest? And we're like, sure. And he's like, okay, then, everybody get your stuff, and we're load on the train, and we're on this 20-hour train ride, and you got to stop when you hit the Russian border, and you're stopped for like 5 hours while they check everyone's passports. It's ridiculous. Okay, so we finally get to Budapest, and he's like, okay, you're staying in this youth hostel. We're so happy to get to our beds, and we slept for like 5-6 hours, and he comes, okay, everybody, you got to get up, man. You got to get up and get all your stuff and put in the van. We're going to go to the show. And I'm like, okay, whatever. We're going to the show, and you're just kind of wandering and seeing all these statues. And we the van pulls up to the back of the stage, and we go up on this stage, and we're playing in front of like 20,000 people at this outdoor, gigantic, stage that they had built. And it was Earth Day. And so that was one of the first, I remember we had Earth Day when I was at in Boston, like 91. So this was like 98.
Mm-hmm.
Well, might have been before that, but anyway, well, I guess it was 96 or 97. But anyway, I'd never experienced anything like that. Just a bunch of guys, playing Kansas City jazz for, and they just loved it.
Sure.
So that was a fun.
Oh yeah, I'm
that was
sure.
a fun
And
experience.
I've heard that around the world too. It's really funny. I keep telling the story that Hopper was talking about going down to Brazil or somewhere in South America, and he was down there getting jammed with these guys, and he's like, "Come on, play your bossa," and they're like, "Ugh," they're like, "No, we want your swing," and Matt's like, "Ugh." So it was really neat how they were like, no, we're tired of playing our samba bullshit.
Yeah.
We want to play your. And so Matt's playing his thing, and then finally he got them to play some bossa, and he's like, it's just a freaking cloud, I mean, the drummers are just, insane, and you're just soloing over, just nothing, I mean, 'cause it's just so smooth, and their pocket is insane, but I'm sure like he, and he was talking about that they were a little tight, I mean, their swing was a little tighter than the just, anybody in the jazz scene here, you get them doing like a medium swing and they're going to absolutely destroy that, I mean, because that's our stuff, that's Kansas City. But it was so interesting how they were so apprecitive.
Yes.
Of American music. I mean, it sounds like you had the same
that's
experience.
weird, Michael Ibraniak played before us, and there are all these. I mean, we're just sitting there listening to the bands playing before us, going, "These guys are amazing," and we're just like regular. We had guys from around the country, but they wanted us to play Kansas City style music, jazz, and we were just like, well, they thought it was the greatest thing ever,
Mm-hmm.
So, and it did, there is something to going on the road and playing the same music like that where it really helps you get better also, make it sounds better. So
I can't imagine like Louis back in 1940 or something, like USO tour or something over in France or somewhere, and they're just tearing it up, and these guys have never heard anything like this before.
Right.
I mean, I can't imagine what kind of feeling that was. I mean, that's just really always amazing that a lot of people here, we just get bombarded out of your commercials, and the movies, and like, I mean, doctor's office. I mean, we just get bombarded with music and take it for granted, here in America, and then just how appreciative they are over there with it. It seems.
Yeah, it's just it's like how Matt loves the Brazilian style samba. They're like, we hear it every day. So it's something different.
We hear bastard versions of the Kansas City guys playing good. I mean, everybody here, the jazz scene plays good stuff, but we don't sound like Venezuela does,
right?
Or any of those countries down
there. But I
think
like Doug Allwater and those guys, they have the idea. I think for that kind of music, man, like you can practice it at home, but you got to go down there. You got to go down there for a week or a month or whatever you can figure out how to pull it off and just submerge yourself in that culture, and because you can tell it in his playing and the guys that have gone down there and experienced it. It's really,
Yeah, that's cool, man. Well, probably wrapping up here. Again, this is Sam Platt, drummer in Kansas City, and we'll be back next time to talk about more stuff with more people. So, thanks for coming, man.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, that was fun, dude. See you guys next time.
All right. Thanks. See you.